So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to CUP for being here for panel number 3. If you would like to step out and pray, there's a prayer room right in the back over there where they'll be conducting prayer. So our third panel, Democracy as a Path to Peace, Ensuring Stability Through Political Inclusion, sounds a little pie in the sky sometimes, right? For those of us who have been working and writing on this for quite a while, it's like, seriously, we're still going to talk about democracy as a path to peace? We wish. However, last year we did see a couple of bright moments, right? We saw what happened in Bangladesh with the removal of Sheikh Hasina. We saw what happened in Syria. And so while there are these kind of really pessimistic conversations, which is what I engage in most of the time, there have been these glimmers of hope. But I think more interestingly, the data on the ground tells us that, for example, after the Arab Spring, among Arab Spring countries, there was a 67% support for democracy. Today, among Arabs in the Middle East, there's a 78% support for democracy. And so while we become pessimistic about the future, it looks like there's something stirring on the ground that should give us pause to think about why is it that those on the ground still believe that democracy, democratic reform, accountability and transparency is still possible in what they're striving for. So having said that, we will have a panel today that will look at Jordan, at Morocco, at Tunisia, and at Sri Lanka as examples of possible paths towards the future. So we're going to begin with Dr. Jamal Tahat, who will talk about Jordan, analyzing the 2024 parliamentary elections and the growing power of King Abdullah. Do you want to come up here? Whatever you want. What you want? No, whatever you prefer. Okay. Up here? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for having me here. Thank you for everyone to attend this opportunity to meet and think together. Actually, the title of the brief I have contributed to, and which is also the title of my talk now, it's about... Speak up, please. Okay. The title of the speak is about the 2024 elections, parliamentary elections, and the growing power of King Abdullah. This is very clear that election everywhere, it's an opportunity to further democracy and to foster citizen participation. But in Jordan, it was an opportunity for the king to tighten his grip over the state institutions. To understand this anomaly and this unnatural situation and this anomaly, I think there are two major questions. First one, what factors make elections in Jordan ineffective in advancing democracy? And the second question, from my point of view, it is what steps can be taken to ensure that elections serve as an effective means for peaceful democratization in Jordan. So this is the challenge, to address the anomaly and to understand it, and actually also to find a way to deal with it. To answer the first question from as per following up Jordan, I think we need to address 5 sections of the elections scene in Jordan. What happened in Jordan? What was the context of the election? How the Jordanians respond to this context and how they actually act in the election. How King Abdullah II utilized this election. And the fourth section, from my point of view, the motive, the economic motive of authoritarian regime to tighten grip over state institutions. Why they are doing this? Is it a matter of psychological problem, or there is interests, economic interests behind this? And the fifth section, from my point of view, we need to address also, or to understand, it's about what sort of deception being used in Jordan to convince people, whether inside Jordan and international, that we are talking about democracy. How the regime managed to, let me say, sell this event and this practice as quasi-democracy, or to be accepted internationally and locally. To talk about the context, from my point of view, we need a matrix of five sections. First one, it's about the latest constitutional amendments in Jordan, which from these amendments, Parliament becomes sort of paralyzed institution, and there is more than 20 constitutional amendments over the last 20 years, all of them focused on concentrating the power in the king's hands. In addition to that, actually, and which is, from my point of view, very peculiar in Jordan, that the bylaw of the parliament itself allows the pro-king parliamentarians to dismiss any member of the parliament who loudly talk out of the official line. And it happens many times. So the context very clear, and within this context, how the Jordanians respond, and it was very, from my point of view, very natural, at the same time very challenging for the king. 68% of the Jordanians respond with abstention, which means the people who participated in the election, less than 32%. In addition to that, 260,000 of the voters submit blank ballots, which means it's another way of protesting the context, and it's another way of expressing people's opinion of what is going on. The third, or the other section of the scene could be helpful, which is, even this was the very clear Jordanians, the majority of the Jordanians' response. The king was, I don't know how to describe it. He said it clearly that the election being designed, and the system, the political system being designed according to what he called it political modernization vision. And he says clearly, this is his words, this vision built on the highest level of national consensus. 68% are not enough to convince that this is not a national consensus. However, what really supports or why the king said so is because he's somehow disconnected from reality, or he wants something else, or he thinks in a political system that feels 68% of the Jordanians looks like extra burden, and they are not welcomed to become part of the political system. That's why he's really defending what is going on. And by this, with this public response and the king's insistence to defend what he says, called it as political modernization vision, the king after the election behavior really gives very clear idea about what sort of political modernization vision is. First two things he did. He appointed a new government few days after the election, excluding any opportunity, any assumption that the new elected parliament could have a say somehow in the government structure, or who's going to be the prime minister or the ministers. So he is controlling the executive body and excluding a parliament from any way of interfering in formulating the Jordanian cabinet. Not only this, it's also imposed. He did impose his vision on the relation between the cabinet and the parliament, asking the cabinet to, exactly his words, to consult, to dialogue with the parliament and consult its committees. That is the relation between the executive body he appoints and he dismisses upon his discretion, and the elected parliament. And this is according to the vision we are talking about. What is the public will and what is the Jordanians' representative role? 5 دقائق. It's okay. After all, and just to make it clear, why the king insists with his on this vision, and is it again a matter of psychological attitude towards power, or there is economic interests behind this? Actually, from any revision of the economic situation in Jordan, there are so many economists, not only one, who make some assessment about the situation in Jordan, and one of them called it it's not a state, it becomes a dynastic enterprise, as the royal family in fact control more than 25% of the Jordanian GDP. In all sectors you can imagine: agriculture, education, health service, scientific research, universities, excavation for what they called it, I forget the term. All sectors, any sector, transportation, every sector, at least one member of the royal family, or if we call it, by the order of the king. There is organization controlling part of this sector, in fact, controlling and dominating this sector. In scientific research, for instance, one of the prince, uncle of the king, and his daughter managing this sector, two institutions. And in what any sector you can imagine, they are there. So this is actually, from my point of view, explain what is the economic motives behind this political modernization vision. Now, how the king managed to sell this to the international community and to what we can call them a Jordanian secular political components. The election law actually allows something very strange, that Islamic Action Front, while getting exactly 28% of the votes, however, they got 42% of the seats. And the loyalists, by getting 35% of the votes, they got 58% of the seats. At the same time, 37% of the voters being excluded from any presence in the parliament. The issue, it becomes very clear. Either you will accept the king, pro-Western king. Somehow we can't deny that he is embracing Western values, or we will accept the venture and the risks and the threats of dealing with Islamist government or Islamist majority. After this, there are few recommendations. Do I have a couple of minutes or no?
You're out of time, sorry.
Out of time, okay. Okay. We will, if I have time, I will discuss it. Okay. Thank you.
But I apologize. So next we have Maad Fatour from the Department of Religion at University of Georgia, who will be discussing from post-colonial leftist to post-Arab Spring Islamists, the Moroccan monarchy's strategic maneuverings.
Thank you.
No, I don't think we're going to.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Oh, let me see if we... Can I take this? Hello. So, hello everyone. Good afternoon. And I know we just have had lunch, and it might be sometimes we get tired and we might want to sleep, but just bear with us for a bit. So, thank you so much for inviting us to this, and thank you so much for organizing it, and thank you so much for bringing such amazing and distinguished people to share their knowledge with us. So, as you see, Yes, thank you. My presentation today, it's a paper that I have been working on since the beginning of the year, and it's from post-colonial leftists to post-Arab Spring Islamists, the Moroccan regime strategic maneuvering. So basically, it's here, it's we are dealing with an institution. I think no, I'm not changing anything now. Can we go back to the first slide? So it's basically we are dealing with something that once I see you as I perceive you as a threat, so we're gonna use strategic maneuverings, and I used as an approach this carrot and stick approach. I involve you, and then I give you the carrot, then I can give you the stick later on. So, and basically here we have the issue with in post-colonial Morocco, leftists, as you know, in the region, it was 1956. It was a challenge to all monarchies in Africa and in the MENA region. So the Moroccan monarchy, Hassan II, tried his best to push away the seculars, not to be in to have the power. So how to do that? You use Islamists. What you did is that you just borrowed all these guys coming from Saudi Arabia. So in Saudi Arabia give you these Wahhabis. Now, because you are perceived as a threat. Now with, you know, can we go to the move to the other slide? Please. And here in an article I was working on, which is basically also, it's still the maneuvering, which is how now the Moroccan monarchy is working on like moving from Salafism to Sufism as like a kind of like a global trend. All these countries rejecting Salafism. So the Moroccan monarchy, we are not surprised that he puts Sufism as on the facade of what we call reforming Moroccan Islam as a third element of the reform. So you find this type of jurisprudence, kind of like Maliki jurisprudence, which they consider as kind of like moderate, but Abu Hanifa remains top. And then they say Sufism is the state kind of like institutionalized form of Islam, kind of like now we are moving away from Salafism, which they before were pushing it. So now they move to what is called Sufism and promoting it in institutions, and King Hassan Muhammad VI, the current king, has been applying that. So the thing is, why I am just referring to this, many of the guests here and the speakers were talking how this is really affecting us. Democracy is really affecting us. As someone who recently moved to Turkey to live with my wife there after graduation last year from University of Georgia, you feel like the situation is going crazy there. In Morocco is the same. In the US, with what you see, the students and all, they are trying to just make people, you know, don't speak. As the Turkish people, the first thing when I came, I learned konuşma, don't talk. So whenever I go to these, you know, interviews for a job, one of the things I didn't, in Morocco, even Morocco, I never thought, it never came to me. But after you finish an interview, sometimes they tell you, are you affiliated with the Gulenists? And then the Gulenists, you can do a brief research on what the Gulenists are, but it's basically the opponents of Erdogan. They were friends, Fatullah Gulen, who died, may God bless his soul. But it's an issue. It's a very big issue there. So, and for these regimes, democracy is a big issue. So democracy is a big issue. It threatens people. That's why you feel like Donald Trump went and took all that money, because these people didn't want to implement democracy. So he got all their money from there. So you don't want democracy? Let me get, you know, your money. So I put you there secured. Don't be afraid from your own people. Can we move to the other slide, please? Oh, can we move? Oh, yes. And here when we are talking about the power of the king, it's very important to notice that here is the power of the monarchy, to know that when you say that Morocco is kind of like, as a parliamentary democracy in Article 1, so the king actually holds an overriding authority, military commander, and then has this cabinet, hold cabinet's leadership, the power to dismiss parliamentary, and then he has this dahir, which is like basically a veto that can stand against all these ministers or even the head of the government. And also you have religious authority, which is the commander of faithful. The king in Morocco is called Amirul Mu'mineen. What does that tell us? Like, is a blow to the secularists and also to the Islamists. What does that mean? Don't even, for the secularists that they are pushing for the state and religion separation, don't talk about that. It's up to me. I am the commander of the faithful. And for those opposing him from the Islamists, Salafists, Wahhabites, you can't come with anything. When I do these religious reforms, which happened in 2004 after the terrorist attack in Casablanca, my city, in my neighborhood close to me, so the king came with a lot of reforms which the Salafists and Wahhabis were not happy with. Don't talk, konishma, as the Turkish people say. It's the king, Amirul Mu'mineen, who can decide. So the seculars don't talk, so the Islamists and conservatives don't talk about any of the king's decision. He is Amirul Mu'mineen. So, and then what happens is that it feels like sorry, I can go back to the other slide, is that what happens is that the head of governments, what happens to them is that they stay with symbolic authority. Nothing, because even in this 2011 constitution, the king still holds the Ministry of Interior, the head of it, and then Foreign Affairs, he's the one in charge of it, and Ministry of Justice and Islamic Affairs. These are all called ministries of sovereignty. Meaning that it's the king who hires them, and the head of government can't have any say about them. So he hires them and they can stay for 18 years, for 15 years. So basically, with all this entrenched power, including this is non-constitutional, by the way, that you can hire them, that you can put these ministers, even if politically non-affiliated, but still you go there. This is maneuvering. All of this is called maneuvering, democracy and maneuvering. We can go to the other slide thing. And here, what you come out with that conclusion, that before trying to see what democracy is, and especially in countries like us, it's very important to see that you look beyond what elections and to see what is structuring that power. And in here, for example, you see that most of these, the leftists, for example, in 1998, these leftists were really causing a lot of problems to the King Hassan II before, after post-independence. Finally, he included them. But he included them in what? In times of crisis. That time it was called the cardiac attack of the country. The country was about to have a heart attack. No, the economic situation was crazy. Everything was going down. Then the king finally, and after 3 failed attempts, military coup. Do you know what was happening in the post-independence era in the MENA region in Africa? The king was lucky to survive 3 attempted military coup. And then he brought the leftists, and they stayed from 1998 till 2002. But there was a promise. The monarchy had a promise with the leftists that we would transition to. We would transition to something called, democracy. It's called the government of alternance. Hold on now. We have been fighting for more than 4 decades, but we can now. I involve you. You become Idris Yousfi was the prime minister, and then he put him there on the condition that we will transition to a democracy later on. Just hold on. But the king was dying. He wanted someone to just. He he wanted the new king, which is now the current one, King Mohammed VI, to transition to power without the leftists fighting. And then we have the Islamists in the Arab Spring, post-Arab Spring. That's called the storm of the MENA region. So it was really crazy. And then, okay, now we moved from the heart attack from the MENA region. Let's now put them in this called the storm of it. And the king was very smart because he was looking and seeing what's happening and was observing exactly in Tunis and then in Libya and then all these moments of crisis. Let me put now the Islamists. Maybe they would fix something. And then the Islamists came for over a decade, but it was all of this giving you the stick, but you can't do anything. It's me who is involved in everything, but it could be direct, it could be indirect through the coalition. The coalition, all of them are the palace supporters, not you. And then after you feel like you are there, you're promising, the leftists were promising, the Islamists were promising, then when they saw that they can't do anything, there is no power, what happens is that they started to get closer to the king. And then this is also another way of maneuvering when you get closer to the king, so people would see that you can't trust these guys. The only person we can trust is the monarch. And then especially when the monarch start implementing big reforms like human rights reforms. We have some feminist women's rights reforms like Moderator, that we can come to these ones. I hope I have time for this. Can we move to the other slide, please? And then here we have, I am not denying that we have, when you come to the MENA region, people talk about how Morocco is an exception, but the thing is, all this exception of Morocco is often moderate Islam, we have this reformist monarchy, we have these things that talks about including women as becoming female scholars, something in the region is a new thing. This is all after the 2003 bombing attacks. The king is all doing this. But what? It's also a way that polishes his image in Western policy circles, that he is a reformist king. And some of these reforms, which we will come to, I hope, some of these reforms, I remember that a lot of leftists were fighting for some reforms, that they keep fighting for them from 1998 till like 2002, and they were not implemented until they left. So the credits will be for the king, not for them. And that's how it works. And then I was just talking about how sometimes we have this, I took this quote, I can just go back to this quote. Sometimes we see these optimistic interpretations of liberalizing reforms like Moderator, the new family code. There are making women female scholars in the MENA region as women, as scholars. This is something new. You don't find it in the Arab world. Only you have like female women religious guides, for example. These are all, they look like liberalizing, but underneath them there is an entrenching authority and authoritarian rule in them. That's what's happening. That's it. Can I do a conclusion or something? Oh, let me see. Let me just choose the one. Can we? And then just probably 1 or 2 minutes, I would say, like, what is the stick for this party? When I mean the USVP, this is a socialist party, that's a leftist party. They were all the reforms. They were included as a carrot after they have been under repression, and then when they came to power, all of the reforms will not implemented, as I said, until they left, so credits are not for them. And also, that government, they were promised to transition to democracy, which is governmental of alternance government. The Moroccan monarchy in 2002, when they even succeeded, he just chose a technocrat. He was like, I'm sorry, the country is going in a crisis, blah, blah, blah. We need to give a technocrat, even if they were the top, that they got the elections, they got all this election. And then 1 more minute, it's about the stick for the Islamists. The stick for the Islamists is that what happened is that Islamists also came in this just to help the crisis of what's going on in the Middle East and the Arab Spring. And then what he did is that a lot of palace affiliated parties, the king wanted them to be in the government of Abdullah bin Kiran, which is an Islamist. And then he refused. Then what the king did in 2017 is that he dismissed him. And then Islamists, Morocco is still conservative, but during the Islamists, the king forced the Islamist head of government to sign the normalization treaty with Israel. That was their final stick. And the year after that, in 2021, they got only how many votes? 13 out of 126 before. So then liberals came. I'm sorry, it took some time. Well, thank you so much.
Democracy, not be dictatorial. But I'll have to be a little bit more dictatorial. Okay, so our next presenter is Dr. Mohammed Al-Khalifi. He's an author and attorney from Tunisia. He's an attorney at the New York City Commission on Human Rights. He'll be talking about democratic backsliding in Tunisia, lessons for democracy in the Muslim world. Please. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, thank you everyone for being here this afternoon. I want to thank everyone who's here and for the invitation to give this talk about Tunisia. I'm happy to see faces I know, like people who I was with in struggle in Tunisia and activism, like Ayman. Hi. And like people who gave me space to write, like Democracy for the Arab World Now, like Sarah Lee, thank you. I want to talk about, the title of the article is Lessons for Democracy in the Muslim World. I don't want to claim here that we're giving any lessons, because in Tunisia, always the situation is about, we're always like seen as that Arab Spring started in our country and we're giving lessons to others. So I'm just trying to highlight some key points of what happened and why the current political situation in Tunisia is like now today. The Arab Spring started in my hometown in Sidi Bouzid. So the Arab Spring is a cause that is deeply personal to me, and it affected the way I see things a lot. And it's hard to watch how democracy is being dismantled in Tunisia now in fast pace, unfortunately. So Tunisia emerged from the 2011 Arab Spring with remarkable democratic promise in a region fraught with authoritarianism and sectarian conflicts. Tunisia stood as a beacon, adopting a progressive constitution in 2014. And the constitution of 2014 was not a donation from who was in the government back then. I would say it was the result of a lot of struggle of civil society, a lot of compromises of different political powers who accepted to work together, which saved us a lot probably of conflict and saved us probably a long-term crisis. And Tunisia had the chance to hold free elections to an extent, which was very unique in the Arab region and in the Muslim world. And the civil society was empowered. I had the opportunity to take part of that as a member or an active member in civil society and see how civil society in Tunisia almost shaped or participated in shaping the political climate in Tunisia post 2011. Then, while initially what CSID did the current president of Tunisia, and who ironically was my constitutional law professor in law school in Tunisia before coming to the law school here. He justified like his act as a response to political gridlock and corruption. The subsequent months marked a clear departure from democratic norms. And so I tried to investigate Tunisia's democratic backsliding and try to consider what lessons the trajectory holds for democracy in Muslim-majority societies. And the concept of democratic backsliding has gained scholarly traction in the last decade with all what is happening in the world now, especially not only in the MENA region, but I would say all over the world. Particularly the work of Nancy Bermeo on democratic backsliding. It's a fabulous, fantastic piece of work that defines democratic backsliding as the state-led debilitation or elimination of political institutions that sustain an existing democracy. This erosion does not necessarily take the form of a coup or military takeover, but may unfold through legal mechanisms and populist legitimacy. And in classic democratization theory, Liz and Stefan emphasize 5 arenas of consolidation: civil society, political society, rule of law, a usable state bureaucracy, and an institutionalized economic society. Tunisia appeared to make some progress in all 5. But yet, some analyses have attributed authoritarian persistence in the Muslim world to cultural or religious factors, like we're not fit for democracy, we don't deserve democracy. There's this whole narrative in the Muslim world stating that now we just need a dictator because we do not have democracy rooted in our culture. However, scholars like Alfred Stefan argue that Islam is not inherently democratic. There were great interventions before me about that, and that institutional and socioeconomic structures are far from explanatory. Tunisia trajectory supports this institutionalist view. The problem obviously was not Islam. Tunisia is 99% Muslim, and even the non-Muslim communities lived for thousands of years in peace in Tunisia. But it was technically the fragility of democratic norms, lack of economic inclusion, and the personalization of power. The findings of this brief paper was first the limits of institutionalism, and that the 2014 Tunisian constitution was lauded internationally. It was to a good extent progressive. It guaranteed a lot of freedoms. It was a result of, I would say, a lot of different classes in Tunisia, including the political class of the civil society, the social movements. Everyone participated to make sure that they imposed their own view and to have a say in the constitution of 2014. It guaranteed the separation of powers, judicial independence, and individual rights. Yet institutions on paper did not translate into perfect democratic resilience. Parties were fragmented, electoral coalitions were unstable. We saw a lot of good coalitions that collapsed easily, and the judiciary remained somehow politicized, unfortunately. While the 2022 constitution, adopted by referendum amid super low turnout, around I think 20% or even lower than that, dramatically restricted the balance of power. It was clearly written by, I would dare to say, one person who was the head of state. It granted President Said near absolute authority, including the ability to appoint judges, bypass parliament. And while he made that sound or look technically legal, these changes undermine the spirit of democratic pluralism, and I would say destroyed any attempt to build the constitutional institutions that were laid out in the Constitution of 2014. And this does suggest that institutional design without enforcement and culture of democratic practice is insufficient. Constitutions are not self-enforcing. Tunisia demonstrated how the hardware of democracy can be overridden when the software, like the political culture, the political environments, and civil commitments are absent. The second finding, I think, is the most important, is the populism and the authoritarian drift. President Said rhetoric painted him as an outsider of the corrupt political elites. He's this teacher who was not involved in any political corruption, or he didn't participate in political life, while I disagree with that. He used a very populist discourse. He spoke only in Foshan that was somehow appealing to a lot of people, seeing him as a saint, or like this professor who is very clean and that is out of the political elite that we need in the scene. He used this populist discourse of moral renewal and national rescue. He appealed directly to the people, as he would like to say, often bypassing intermediary institutions. And as I said, his background as a law professor and outsider lent credibility to his promises to an extent. And this mirrors a broader pattern where populist leaders weaponize popular dissatisfaction to entrench power. In Tunisia, there was a frustration with unemployment, with political disability. People were somehow frustrated with the scenes they see in the parliament. Then COVID hit, and it's really amazing to see how pandemics can really affect like the whole political stability in some countries. And CSID, to an extent, used that to seize power. Inflation, some elite impunity created like this fertile grounds. CSID is ruled by decree governance post-2021, and arrest of opponents, journalists, under anti-terror laws exemplify how populism morphs into autocracy that we're witnessing now. Yet, unlike classical dictatorships, the shift was gradual and clothed in constitutional legitimacy, a hallmark of 21st century. Even though I can find some counterexamples to this, like Alberto Fujimori in Peru, who technically is the same strategy of like this outsider person who became a politician that became this like dictator in Peru and then ended up as a fugitive. The third finding is the role of civil society, like the resilience meets repression. Civil society was definitely a pillar of Tunisia post-2011 transition. I would say even during the revolution. I remember very well in my hometown how IGTT, the national labor union in the country, was organizing some of the protests, played an important role in dialogue, even in 2015, I think. So also the Union of Tunisian Journalists and organizations like the Tunisian League of Human Rights played a crucial role in mediating political conflict and defending liberties. However, those groups under sides have faced growing pressure. Surveillance, judicial harassment, regulatory crackdowns have curtailed civil society space. The arrest of activists, the dissolution of opposition parties, restrictions of foreign-founded NGOs, always labeled now as like traitors and sellouts, signal chilling environment. And I would say even some of the biggest organizations like the labor union in Tunisia is almost kneeling now and collaborating with the regime with what is going on. So just to conclude, since I only have 5 minutes left, I would say that first, elections alone are not enough. Tunisia's story reminds us that elections, though vital, are not sufficient for democratic consolidation. Electoral legitimacy can coexist with authoritarian governance, like what is happening now. Everyone's argument is like, oh, CSID won with 90%. Why were you questioning his legitimacy? Particularly when the rule of law is weak. As Farid Zakaria notes, a liberal democracy is on the rise where leaders are elected but institutions are hollowed. Second, point is populism as the Trojan horse. Populist leaders often exploit institutional dysfunction to justify radical centralization. Their legitimacy rests on a direct and immediate dictatorial relationship with the people, bypassing checks and balances. While for Said, everyone is a traitor except him, and he's the only one who is the spokesperson of the people in Tunisia. Tunisia showed how quickly populism can become a tool of legal authoritarianism. Third conclusion is that civil society needs legal and political guarantees. We have seen how easy is it to dismantle civil society, to make the civic space shrink. In Tunisia, it's kind of very scary how things are different now. So civil society actors cannot safeguard democracy on their own. They need protection. They need legal guarantees. Laws that ensure freedom of association, independent judiciary to defend those rights, and a media landscape that fosters pluralism. In Tunisia, the erosion of these protections has made resistance symbolic rather than transformative, unfortunately. The last point is the culturalist fallacy. Tunisia rebukes essentialist claims that Islam is incompatible with democracy. We have seen attempts to have a stable democracy in Tunisia before 2019. The 2014 constitution was one of the most progressive in the MENA region. We have to give it that. Islamist party accepted secular norm, had given some compromises. Other secular parties did the same. Everyone sat on the table and talked together. And even though personally back then was hardcore opposing all of the political scene and all the political spectrum of parties back then, when I look at it back now, I see that that was a good attempt of having a stable political situation, political regime in the country. The breakdown was structural and not religious. So what happened, to sum up, is that poverty, institutional weakness, foreign pressure, and elite dysfunction in a lot of points, not Islam as a religion, undermine democracy. Thank you.
And finally, we have Dr. Imtiaz, Affiliate Scholar, South Asian Center, University of Pennsylvania, who will be discussing the rise of religious authoritarianism among Sri Lankan Muslims, implications for pluralism and democratic stability in Sri Lanka.
Hello, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. So we had a lot of things from all morning to afternoon about the democracy in Muslim societies. So my country is not a Muslim society. It's an extremely single majority society. The Muslims are tiny minority. So we don't have Muslims as a majority. We are Muslims as what I call privileged minority. Okay. Anyway, first of all, I want to thank you to Dr. Radwan Masoodi for accepting my proposal, and it's my first time to be in this group, and I so far enjoy it very much. Okay. Before I talk about let me talk a little bit about myself. I'm from Sri Lanka. Was born and raised in Sri Lanka. Then I got my PhD from China, where I lived there almost 15 years. Speak Chinese very fluently. I taught, work, and married to Chinese women. Then they kicked me out of the country because of my one publication about Uyghur national questions. So they gave me a 2 weeks notice, asked me to get the hell out of that country. So I was expelled 2020, happily expelled, and I came everywhere. I'm here now. All right. So my country, as you guys might know, they call it Sri Lanka. It's a tiny island. Or you guys might know, right? Every time I go to class, talk about my country, people have no idea. What's your country? Sri Lanka. Because I told my students maybe this country has not been bound, my country, yet. So if you know, if he has bombed this country, you could have it know. Anyway, it's a country right next to India, where I was born and raised, and my presentation is about Muslims, the what I call privileged minority. So Muslims in Sri Lanka, actually, we have a very solid rights. It's pretty much closer or very similar to what Muslims will have in a Muslim majority country. The reason that we have such a what I call privileged situation in Sri Lanka is there's an ethnic conflict going on between the Tamils and the Sinhalese. So the Muslims in Sri Lanka, we are not associated with the other minority who are Tamils, who speak Tamil language. So we are with the majority ethnic group called Sinhalese ethnic group. Even though I speak Tamil as my native language, I seek my ethnic identity based on my faith, Islam. Back in my country again, the Muslims seek their ethnic identity based on faith, Islam, which is very interesting. That concern came to my community during the British colonial period, when the British administration tried to give the local power. The leaders from my community, they demanded what they call separate and distinct identity for Muslims, even though we speak Tamil language as Tamil. The British easily accepted and gave a separate identity representation to Muslims. So this ethnic concession not came from the Muslims, it's Muslim themselves. It came from the top, from the British government, and we took it, we enjoyed it so nicely, and after independence, our successful governments still supported our own identity based on our faith, and they actually accommodated us in a lot of things. They gave us a separate mosque. If I want to build a mosque in my country or in my community, I could build it without any permission. What I teach, what I pray, nobody cares nothing. The government cares nothing. And also, the government, governments have allowed, are usually allowed to establish or find madrasas wherever I want, and I could teach anything. Yes, literally anything, saying that non-Muslims would be in a burned in hell. They'll go to hell. Whatever I can preach, I can teach those kids who are coming from lower income families. I have seen, I have read their syllabus, very extremist syllabus, and government pays nothing. They don't care, because they want the Muslim support to crush the Tamil tigers. So the Muslim madrasas taught these poor Muslims with a horrible hatred toward non-Muslims, and the government knew and did nothing about that one. But the Tamil tigers who are fighting against the government, they responded to us. They burned the mosque, they expelled the Muslims, and what happened was then the Muslims decided to have their own political party. In the past, until 1985, Muslims did not have any separate party. The reason was simple, because our government is giving everything to us. So why do I want to have a new party? But the Tamil tigers, who are Hindus, they burned free mosque, they expelled the Muslim from North Sri Lanka, and we had a new political party called Sri Lanka Muslim Congress. This political party itself very aggressive in terms of formulating the agendas, slogans. I was at the time a high school kid. I saw it. So their campaign, Allahu Akbar, Nare Takbir, Allahu Akbar. And when you see this kind of slogans to ordinary people, farmers, villagers, oh my God, they had a new gun come to kill people. On that kind of emotion, I have seen those things by my own eyes. And the leaders win. When you use Allah Akbar, La ilaha Muhammad Rasulullah, and we kill Tamil tigers, it's one thing. Here, if LTD is killing us, the LTD is leaving us out of our homes simply because we happen to be Muslims, simply because we say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, because of our belief in Allah and Prophet Muhammad. If that is the only reason, it is the commandment of the Holy Quran that we should declare jihad against them and kill every LTDA. We shall now intend to slaughter every LTDA, including Mr. Prabhakaran. In a personal note, I will be happiest if I can die in a battle at the time of slitting the neck of the bloody Prabhakaran. Here the guy Prabhakaran is the leader of the Tamil Tigers who were killed on May 9th of 2009. So when that Muslim party was formed, the Muslims responded very positively. You know, the party won a lot of elections. Really easy. Because when you say Allahu Akbar, La ilaha Rasulullah to poor people to win elections, yeah. So you can win the votes. They won easily. A lot of ordinary, uneducated youth and workers because of that La ilaha Rasulullah. Then also during this period, when this kind of what I call Salafist slogans come up, the ordinary Muslims also rallied against the Sufis in Sri Lanka, across the country. Many Sufi mosques were burned. Sufi leaders were killed by Wahhabis, and one of my uncle was narrowly escaped from this Wahhabi attack, and one of the leaders of the Sufi movement was shot and killed, and these Wahhabis did not allow his families to bury his body in his place. What they did was they carried his body, the died Sufi guy's body, to parade the body across the street. They parade his body. Why? Because he was a Sufi. Horrible experiences. So many Sufis were killed. So my uncle, as I said, survived miraculously. And now you see here, on your left, like you can see that, date tree, am I right? Or palm tree, whatever. The tree, a palm tree. You know, my country is no good for this kind of trees because it's a tropical island. You don't see, you don't put that one. But these Wahhabis, when the Wahhabi brought all these things, they buried, they planted to make sure they are real good Muslims. You know, also you see there's a mosque on your left over there. They build the mosque like a exactly, to show that we are the best Muslims, you know, even though we are minority. The government said nothing. Okay, everything happened was, you know, finally what happened was we saw this guy. We saw all these, yeah, okay. So all these finally led to this guy's rise, ISIS. 2019, so there were huge terrorist bombing in Colombo, across the country. 300 people were died by a group of people, and you see here, they target the church mainly. You can see one guy is coming to the church. The church was totally bombed and killed. All of the people died. All are Christians. You may ask me why they are Christians? Why they want to kill Christians, even though Sri Lanka is a Christian country? They said that because there was a bombing in New Zealand. In mosque, so they want to revenge Christians in Sri Lanka for that bombing terrorist act. So there's a main reason. And they said that the Christians live mainly in democracies, so we oppose democracy. So that's why we kill those people. Okay, the last one. You can see the Muslim girls, if you go to my country, you can see a lot of Muslims are nowadays like this. My mom never wear like this. My mom wear sari, the Indian dress, Now you don't see, if you wear sari nowadays, they'll say you are not Muslim. And the young boys are being taught kind of Wahhabi style of thinking. So how do we go from here? That's a good question. How do we go? Where are we going from here? Sri Lanka, the Muslims is still, they are enjoying a very good space. There's no any kind of pressure from the government to stop what they are doing, because government wants Muslim support. I actually have to talk, but I don't want to talk now. I will more time. If you have any questions, just we can talk later. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Q&A. We'll take 3, 4. Okay, 1. Oh.
Thank you. I have 2 questions, one from Muad, one from Mohammed. Thank you for your presentations, all of you, by the way. The first one is for Muad, and according to your presentation, it seems that the PGD is somehow co-opted, as you use this term, if we can say that, and the only voice which is expressing somehow a dissident against the authoritarianism monarchy could be, for instance, the movement of justice and spirituality. And I was wondering, what do you think about that? What is the role of this movement? And if this movement is also having a role at the diasporic level, considering that it is very challenging against the monarchy. So this is the question for you. And the question for Mohammed, I feel very sympathetic, because I was in Tunisia from 2015 and 2018 for my fieldwork, so it's very sad what is going on in these days. And I do agree with you with all the causes that paved the way to the autocratization. But as I was wondering if, in addition to the lack of economic support, the lack of institutions, such as the lack of a constitutional court, which is a major pitfall, if you were considering also the fact, for instance, that there were already since 2014 some securitization dynamics against, for instance, civil society actors. There was a huge breakdown of civil society in 2014. Many associations that I was interviewing were closed. So my question for you is, do you find any correlation between what was going on in 2014 onwards as a kind of path dependency that facilitated the autocratization process? Thank you.
I think we have 3 here, right?
Thank you. I had a question for Muad. My question is about, you talked about the king's religious authority, right, as the commander of the faithful, Amir al-Mu'mineen. I was wondering, so there's an alternative discourse coming from the Islamist groups especially, right, the 2 main ones, but is there any alternative religious discourse from the ulama or like the more official religious institutions in Morocco at all? In Egypt, for instance, you have Al-Azhar, Sheikh Al-Taib, has a relatively autonomous voice when it comes to religious matters, particularly from the authoritarian government in Egypt. Thank you.
Question, no, that's you.
Yeah, I have a question for Muad as well about Morocco. What does the presence of Israeli troops on Moroccan soil recently in joint military drills tell us about the resilience of authoritarianism in Morocco? I mean, obviously it tells us it's very resilient because they don't care about public opinion, but you could say more about this recent development in terms of the political landscape in Morocco?
Thank you. Hi, my question is for Mohammed. I followed Tunisia for many, many years at Human Rights Watch, and in hindsight, I overestimated the strength of the democratic reflex among the Tunisian people. I think we in civil society, both internationally and domestically, thought we were busy consolidating democracy in Tunisia, but things went off the rails abruptly, and the pushback has been, for me at least, very disappointing. And I'm not making a cultural observation because I'm seeing the same thing with horror in this country. The pushback to the dismantling of our checks and balances here has been disheartening. So I think Americans and Tunisians have something in common there. My question to you is, my feeling is that the democratic reflex will return only when the authoritarian or the illiberal alternative goes off the rails. And I don't see that yet happening in Tunisia, but ask you if you see signs of a stronger democratic pushback at all in Tunisia, or is it just the usual suspects who are a small minority pushing back?
So we'll go through one time, and if you have any concluding remarks, probably include that then.
Well, thank you for your questions, and I will try to do my best to answer them. So basically, your question, according to your question, is basically when we talk about justice in development, which is the Islamist that I was talking about, al-adala wal-tanmiya, which is taking the model of the Turkish model, so the Erdogan one. So, and the justice and benevolence, which is al-adl wal-ihsan. So al-adl wal-ihsan and justice and development party, and then the al-adl wal-ihsan, justice and benevolence. These are two, I would say, the opposing one is al-adl wal-ihsan, the justice and benevolence. Yes, as you know. So it's basically the difference between these two is that the justice and benevolence, al-adl wal-ihsan, these ones are hardcore on opposing the king, and they are also banned from the political participation because Sheikh Abd Salam Yassin, you know him, he's the one who sent the letter to, it's basically a small book to the previous monarch saying either Islam or the flood. And the thing is that these ones, they believe that the institutions, the state institutions, are corrupt and they can't participate in the political change or political arena. So they believe that this participating in it, it's just symbolic. Plus, the big difference between them, the other ones, which is the other Islamists, which are soft and they are accepting to integrate in politics, they believe that we can still bring change through democratic institutions, but the Justice and Development Party, Justice and Benevolence, Al-Adl wal-Ihsan, they don't even believe in these institutions, plus they disagree with each other on one important thing, which is the title, the Islamic title of Amir al-Mu'mineen. The Justice and Benevolence, Al-Adl wal-Ihsan, they don't believe that he is Amir al-Mu'mineen. They believe, even if he has a lineage, they say even if he has a lineage to the prophet, this doesn't make him having the legitimacy, religious legitimacy. But the other ones, which is the Justice and Development Party that ruled for 2 decades, now people hate them, and I think that's also part of the plan. But also, this doesn't mean that they didn't make mistakes. They made mistakes, but they believe he is the Amir al-Mu'mineen, what is it we call Commander of Faithful. But it's very interesting. What happened is that during the Arab Spring, the other ones, the opposition, which is Justice and Benevolence, who are against the king and they don't want to participate in political institutions, these were the ones behind all supporting and bringing the masses to the streets along with the leftists. And also the leftists went down the streets fighting for that. So, and then what happens is that they felt betrayed, because when the election came, who came? It's the ones who were recognized by the state, who are the Justice and Development Party. And those people also couldn't fulfill their promises, also because they say there were constraints. There were some constraints that the king was putting directly and indirectly on them. But also, that's the differences going on like this. One wants to change through political institution. One doesn't believe in it. One believes he is the commander of faithful. One, they believe he is not, even if he has a prophetic lineage. And then the betrayal for the Justice and Development, Justice and Benevolence, Al-Adl wal-Ihsan, is that they fought for it, but the Islamists, the other ones, took it from them. And according to your I hope I answered your question on diasporas, but maybe I think we're almost out of time, so maybe just yeah, because there are 2 other questions. Yeah. I don't know if he can answer her, and then we can. And then the other question is that, of course, having to rule the government, to rule the country as a head of the state, as a king, of course you need that title, Amir al-Mu'mineen. But this doesn't mean that all of the Muslim communities agree. Salafists or these Al-Adl wal-Ihsan, the Justice and Benevolence, they don't agree. But of course you have your own ulama, you have your own scholars, and you are the head of the scholars of. So these scholars, who are basically traditionalists, that we refer to them as Maliki scholars, so they go and they give the legitimacy for the king. I hope this answers the question for that. And the third one, which I just had a look, it was brief, that I just had a look on the Israeli training there. So Moroccans, I would say, as many of the Arab people, that they feel the pain of Palestinians, they really are not happy with all this normalization, and they are not happy with all what's going on. But it's always, you feel like the issue is between Morocco and Algeria. Morocco is trying to push to this, bring in American troops to do this military maneuvering, bring in Israelis, because we have this issue with the Sahara in the west. So it's the Moroccan Sahara, the Western Sahara. It's a big issue. So, but to be honest, to give further on that, people are outraged with it. They don't want it, but you feel like you can't do anything about it, because I would say one more point, I'm sorry, is that the king had a privilege, because no state that had the Arab Spring was as a good model for people. So you go back to authoritarianism. These people, I want them, this is, and I can do what I want. So that's my, sorry.
Thank you. I'll try to answer both questions super quickly. The first question, I totally agree with you that the 2011-2019 was not the best period of time, or the best democratic, like 10 years. Back then I was maybe arrested once in December 2016. I was detained in October 2017. I was arrested again in March 2017 in between. So I didn't have the best time. However, I wish that some of the mistakes that were made back then did not exist. Like, I really wished that the Constitutional Court was established. This could have probably saved us now from what is going on. I'm not going to say that what happened during that time did pave the way to the coup of Qais Said, but I would say some mistakes were like brutal and somehow contributed to like paving the way for him to do what he did, unfortunately. However, at least I would say, I wouldn't say this years ago, but I would say it now, looking back and reflecting on it, that at least back then we were able to sit at the table and talk together and talk things out. We had a national dialogue. People somehow governed together, like the last like parties that you'd think would agree worked so hard to agree on things they never agreed on. So we were working out something. Maybe it was a quasi or an attempt for democracy that we could have developed. But what is going on now, the guy sent tanks to the parliament, literally, dismantled, like, suspended the parliament, then dissolved it, then suspended the constitution, they wrote a terrible one. He is doing everything that is to make us lose hope. We have a lot of political prisoners, we have journalists, bloggers, activists. There was a crackdown on civil society before Qais Said, to be totally transparent. So there were some attacks, there were issues, but what is happening now is way more dangerous. Back then, dialogue was always an option. I'm convinced now that dialogue at least was there back then. People would sit and talk together. I would speak with people in the Communist Party, people would know that at the end of time we're all Tunisians. Tunisians never looked at each other as enemies, like what is Qais Said promoting now. Literally all his speeches, 90% of his speeches are, it's me who support me and enemies and traitors and bad people that we should punish. There's a whole speech, there's a lot of hate speech that is being laid out there, and I think this is super dangerous. To answer super quickly the second question, I remember when Mohamed Aziz set himself on fire in December 2010. That happened on December 17th. I took the bus to Sidi Bouzid the next day. No one back then at all expected a uprising/revolution to happen. People were upset, were tired, but nobody expected a revolutionary momentum. I would hope to say the same now. I think that revolutionary momentum might strike or spark at the last time we were expected to happen. The situation is unfortunately really bad. We have a political scene that is that has totally disappeared, was killed by the regime. Our freedoms are shrinking. Our margin of liberties is being destroyed. However, I would say I have faith, at least in the new generation that is very aware, that is very knowledgeable, that a lot of people who never lived under dictatorship of Ben Ali, so now when they see dictatorship being built, I don't think they like that. I don't think they'll accept it. The situation of the opposition is not at its best, since a lot of its leaders are in prison, and they need a lot of discussions and conversations to agree again and work together. But I have at least always hope in the new generation that is probably more used to living and calling for democracy than accepting and conceding to a classic dictatorship. Thank you.
Thank you. So please join me in thanking our panelists for bringing us examples from Sri Lanka, Jordan, Tunisia, and Morocco. And we'll go right into the next panel. Should I call Salam Ariati, who's the